Have you ever been out on the water staring at your fish finder and it's just lit up? You see a perfect arch, a real giant, sitting right under your boat. You grab your favorite rod, drop the perfect lure right down to it, and nothing. The mark just slowly fades away. It's like you were never there. Why does that happen? You might think the fish just wasn't hungry, but what if I told you that fish knew you were there long before you even made that drop? What if your boat, the very platform you're fishing from, is the single biggest reason you're not getting bit? Today, we're diving deep into why your boat is the last place a wary, pre-spawn base is looking for a meal. I promise, by the end of this video, you'll never look at your position on the water the same way again. And a quick question to get you thinking. Do you believe base are smart enough to recognize a fishing boat, or is it just pure instinct?
Drop your opinion in the comments. I'd love to see what you think. Look, we all know the pre-spawn is a magical time. It's that window when the biggest female bass in the lake are fat, aggressive, and moving up shallow. It's the best chance many of us have to catch a personal best. For generations, the approach has been pretty simple. Find the staging areas, get on top of them with your electronics and start fishing. We've been taught to trust our graphs, see a fish, fish for it. It's a habit, a comfortable routine that's worked just enough times to make us believe it's the only way. But here's the problem. Base behavior hasn't changed, but our boats have. They're bigger, noisier, and packed with more electronics than ever before. We're essentially driving a monster truck into a library and wondering why everyone is so quiet. This old way of thinking of parking right on top of the fish is getting less and less effective, especially on pressured waters. It's time we re-examined our fundamental approach and started thinking less like a fisherman in a boat and more like a hunter on the prowl. First, let's get inside the base's head. You have to understand that their world is completely different from ours. We experience the world primarily through sight and sound. A base experiences it through vibration and pressure. Their most important sensory organ isn't their eyes, it's their lateral line. Think of it as a full-body sonar system. It's a series of pores running down their sides that detects the tiniest water displacements and pressure changes from dozens of feet away. This is how they hunt baitfish in muddy water and how they sense a predator closing in. So while you're admiring the quiet morning, a base is feeling everything. It feels your trolling motor prop wash from 50 feet away. It feels the subtle push of water from your hull as you drift over a spot. Before you even make a cast, that pre-spawn female already has a detailed report on your size, speed, and direction. She's not seeing you, she's feeling you. And in her world, a large, unidentified pressure signature moving overhead almost always means one thing: danger. It's a great blue heron, an osprey, or an otter. It's a threat. Your boat fits that description perfectly. Let's talk more about that pressure wave. This is a concept most anglers completely ignore. Every object moving through water, including your boat's hull, creates a pressure wave in front of it and to its sides. It's basic physics. Imagine walking through a quiet room. Even if you're silent, the air in front of you is being pushed and is moving before you get there. Water is nearly 800 times denser than air, so this effect is massively amplified. Your boat, even when just drifting slowly, is pushing a wall of water ahead of it. A sensitive pre-spawn base doesn't wait for your boat to be directly overhead to react. It feels that wave of pressure coming, sometimes a full minute or more before you arrive. This is especially true in shallow water, where there's less vertical space for the pressure to dissipate. The fish feels this building pressure, and its instinct is to either lock down and hide or to slowly slide away out of the path of the disturbance. By the time you get your boat into that perfect spot and look down at your graph, the smartest, wariest fish are already gone. You're left fishing for the dumber, less reactive ones, or more often, nothing at all. Now for something more obvious but just as critical: your shadow. On a calm, sunny day, your boat casts a large, dark, moving shadow across the lake bottom. Let's think about this from the base's perspective again. They are ambush predators. They use shadows and cover to hide from their prey and from their own predators. What in nature casts a big, moving shadow from above? A bird of prey, a cormorant, something that eats fish. When your boat's shadow passes over a shallow flat where a big female is staging, you have just triggered a primal, hardwired fear response. She isn't going to sit there and wonder if that shadow has a new crankbait to show her. She is going to bolt for the nearest deep water or bury herself in the thickest cover she can find. I've seen it 100 times from a tower boat. An angler will drift across a flat, and you can literally watch the base shoot out from under the boat's shadow like they've been zapped with electricity. And the killer part is the angler in the boat has no idea. They just think the spot is empty. The sun's position should be as important a factor in your boat positioning as the wind's direction. Let's debunk a common myth, the silent trolling motor. We spend thousands of dollars on these high-tech motors because they're supposed to be the key to stealth, and compared to a gas-powered outboard, they are. But they are far from silent in a base's world. First, there's the propeller. Even at its slowest speed, it's creating a constant, rhythmic vibration and a stream of prop wash. It's an unnatural mechanical pulse that a base's lateral line can pick up from a surprising distance. It's a signature that says not natural. Second, and this is something very few people talk about, is the electrical field. Every electric motor, by its very nature, leaks a small amount of electrical current into the water. Fish, especially species like catfish and sharks, are known to be incredibly sensitive to electric fields. While bass aren't as fine-tuned, they can absolutely detect this unnatural electrical signature in their environment. Imagine sitting in a quiet forest and suddenly hearing a faint, high-pitched electronic hum. You'd be on alert. That's what your trolling motor is doing underwater. It's a constant broadcast that something artificial is in the area. Let's move on to the sounds we make inside the boat. Sound travels over 4 times faster in water than it does in air, and with much less energy loss. This means every little noise you make is massively amplified underwater. Think about dropping a pair of pliers on the deck. In the air, it's a sharp clank. Underwater, it's a cannon, a sharp clank. Underwater, it's a cannon blast. That percussive sound wave travels instantly to the lake bottom and radiates outwards. The same goes for slamming a storage hatch shut or scraping a tackle box across the floor. These are sharp, loud, unnatural sounds that will put every fish within a 100-foot radius on high alert. Even talking loudly can transmit through the hull into the water. Picture this: you're a big female bass, already on edge, trying to protect your spawning grounds. Suddenly a series of loud, sharp bangs and scrapes erupt from directly above. You aren't going to stick around to see what's for lunch. You're going to vanish. Being quiet in the boat isn't just about not spooking your partner, it's a critical part of stealth that directly translates to more bites. Treat your boat deck like you're walking on eggshells. Now for the modern-day culprit, our electronics. We love our fish finders, our side imaging, and especially our live, forward-facing sonar. They are incredible tools for finding fish, but they are not passive observation tools. Every single one of them works by sending out a ping, a pulse of sound, and listening for the echo. That's what a transducer does, that ping, ping, ping is happening constantly. While it's at a frequency that is likely too high for bass to hear, in the traditional sense, we cannot be certain that they don't perceive it in some way. Some top-level pros are now swearing that fish in highly pressured lakes have become sonar shy. They believe the bass have learned to associate that constant pinging with danger. It makes sense. If every time you felt that strange, rhythmic pulse, a piece of plastic with hooks suddenly dropped on your head, you'd learn to avoid it too. Whether they hear it or feel it, it's another unnatural stimulus in their environment. Using your electronics to find fish from a distance is smart. Using them to hover directly over a fish while blasting it with sonar pings is like shining a spotlight on a deer before you shoot. So, why is all of this amplified during the pre-spawn? It boils down to one word: survival. This isn't just another day for a big female bass. She is at her most vulnerable and also her most important stage of life. She is carrying the future of her genetic line. Her instincts are screaming at her to be cautious. She has to protect herself and find a safe place to build her nest and lay her eggs. Any perceived threat is magnified 100 times over. In the summer, a bass might tolerate a boat overhead because it's focused on chasing schooling shad in open water. But in the pre-spawn, when she's moving into specific, shallow, and often confined areas, her guard is way, way up. She is not in a risk-taking mood. Her entire biological purpose is focused on survival and reproduction. Your boat, with its pressure wave, its shadow, and its noise, represents a massive, unpredictable threat in the middle of her sanctuary. She will always choose flight over fight when confronted with that kind of intrusion. It's not that she's not biting, it's that she's in pure self-preservation mode. This brings us to one of the biggest tactical mistakes anglers make, the vertical drop. You see a fish on your 2D sonar, or even worse, on your live sonar, sitting right under the boat. The temptation is overwhelming. You open your bail, you drop your drop shot or your jig straight down. It feels like the most precise way to fish. In reality, it's often the absolute worst thing you can do to a pre-spawn bass. By the time you are in a position to drop vertically on a fish, you have already subjected it to every single disturbance we've talked about. It felt your pressure wave approaching. It saw your shadow pass over. It heard your trolling motor. It felt the vibrations from inside the boat. It's been getting blasted by your sonar pings. That fish is on the highest possible alert. It knows you are there. Dropping a lure on its head at that point is like a predator announcing its attack. The bass either ignores it completely, knowing it's a trap, or simply ghosts away. You might catch a few aggressive, smaller male fish this way, but the big, wary females will not fall for it. So, what's the solution? It's a simple concept, but it requires discipline. The solution is distance. You have to start thinking of your boat as having a large, invisible bubble of fear around it. The size of that bubble changes based on water clarity, depth, and how windy it is, but it's always there. Your goal is to keep the fish you want to catch outside of that bubble. This means you have to abandon the idea of fishing what's directly underneath you. Instead, you need to become a proficient caster. Your boat is not a fishing platform, it's a launch pad. Position your boat far enough away from the target, a point, a brush pile, a submerged rock, so that you can make a long cast to it. This way, your lure enters the strike zone long before the boat's negative influence does. The fish sees only the lure, a potential meal, without the accompanying giant shadow and pressure wave of the predator that delivered it. This is the fundamental difference between spooking fish and catching them. Let's put this into a real-life scenario. Imagine a long tapering point that you know bass use as a highway to their spawning flats. The old method would be to drive your boat right up the gut of the point, scanning with your electronics, and then turning around to fish it. By doing this, you've already pushed most of the active fish off the structure. The new approach is to stop your boat 100 feet or more to the side of the point, well off the structure. Hold your position there, using your trolling motor as little as possible. Now you make long, sweeping casts across the point, bringing your crankbait or swim bait through the strike zone from the side. The fish holding on that point never feel your boat's presence directly. They only see the lure swimming naturally through their environment. You can systematically pick apart the entire piece of structure this way, presenting your bait to fish that are relaxed, unaware, and much more likely to feed. You are fishing for undisturbed fish, and that makes all the difference in the world. Another crucial tool in your stealth arsenal is the wind. Most anglers see wind as an annoyance. It makes boat control difficult and casting a pain, but a smart angler sees the wind as a free, silent propulsion system. If the wind is blowing in the direction you want to go, kill the trolling motor completely. Let the wind push you along a bank or across a flat. A boat that is drifting naturally with the wind and waves creates a much more subtle and natural pressure signature than one being pushed by a prop. The background noise of the waves also helps to mask any small sounds you make in the boat. This silent drift is one of the deadliest tactics for shallow pre-spawn base. It does require more work with the boat positioning to set up the perfect drift, but the payoff is huge. You can float right into a school of staging fish without them ever knowing you're there until it's too late. Stop fighting the wind and learn how to use it as an ally for a stealthy approach. Let's talk about boat control in this new, stealthy paradigm. If you have to use your trolling motor, use it smarter. Avoid the constant on-off adjustments. Every time that motor kicks on, it sends out a pulse of vibration. A much better approach is to use your motor on a very low, constant setting. A continuous, low hum is far less alarming to a fish than a series of sharp, sudden starts and stops. It just becomes part of the background noise. Also, think about the direction you're pushing water. If you are approaching a piece of cover, try to position your boat so the prop wash from your motor is being pushed away from the target, not directly at it. These are tiny little details, but a dozen tiny details added together create a massive advantage. It's about being deliberate and conscious of every move you make and every bit of energy you are putting into the water. Every adjustment should have a purpose, and that purpose should be to remain invisible. The depth of the water you're fishing plays a massive role in how you should approach this. In 25 or 30 feet of water, you have a lot more leeway. Your boat's shadow doesn't reach the bottom, and the pressure wave has more room to dissipate. In this scenario, getting closer to the fish might be acceptable, but during the pre-spawn, we are often targeting fish in 10 feet of water or less. In these shallow environments, all the negative effects of your boat are magnified exponentially. The bubble of fear around your boat is at its absolute maximum size. A fish in 5 feet of water has nowhere to go. It sees and feels everything. This is why a stealthy, long-distance casting approach is not just an option in shallow water, it is a requirement for consistent success. If you're fishing shallow, you have to assume that every fish within a 50 or 60-foot radius of your boat knows you are there. So, your primary casts should always be targeted well beyond that radius. Think about how this applies to sight fishing, which is a classic pre-spawn technique. The common approach is to get up on the trolling motor and cruise the banks looking for a base on a bed. But what often happens, you spot a fish, and by the time you stop the boat and get ready to cast, the fish is either acting super spooky or has already swum off the bed. Why? Because it detected you long before you saw it. A much better way is to use the wind to drift silently along the bank, standing up high and using good polarized glasses to scan far ahead of the boat. When you spot a fish, don't stop the boat. Mark the spot mentally, let the boat drift well past it, and then quietly drop your anchor or use your spot lock. Then you can turn and make a long cast back to the bed you found. You are presenting the lure to a fish that saw your boat pass by from a distance but was never directly threatened by it. The fish is far more likely to be relaxed and willing to bite. This concept even changes how you should use your live, forward-facing sonar. This technology is incredible, but many anglers use it to chase fish. They see a dot on the screen, point the trolling motor at it, and chase it around the lake. This is the equivalent of trying to catch a squirrel in a park by running directly at it. You'll never succeed. The smarter way to use this technology is as a long-range reconnaissance tool. Stay put in one spot and use the sonar to scan a 180-degree area in front of the boat. When you identify a fish or a school of fish on a piece of structure 80 or 100 feet away, don't move the boat. Simply turn and make a precise cast to that target. You're using the technology to see beyond your normal casting range and make an ambush presentation to fish that have no idea you are there. It becomes a sniper rifle, not a chasing tool. This is the key to unlocking the true potential of that technology without spooking every fish in the lake. Let's discuss lure selection with this stealth approach in mind. If you're making long casts, you need lures that excel at it. Heavy spinnerbaits, lipless crankbaits, and football jigs are great because they cast a mile and get to the bottom quickly. But also consider baits that have a subtle entry into the water. A wacky rigged stick bait, for example, lands very softly. Casting a bait like that a long distance so it lands quietly near a piece of cover is a deadly technique. The base never hears a loud splash, and it never detects your boat. All it sees is what looks like a dying worm or leech falling gently towards it. This is a purely natural presentation. Compare that to parking your boat on top of a brush pile and dropping a 1-ounce jig into the middle of it. The first approach is a finesse ambush, the second is a home invasion. It's easy to see which one a wary pre-spawn base will respond to more favorably. Patience becomes your greatest asset. This style of fishing is not about running and gunning. It's a slower, more methodical and deliberate process. It requires you to slow down and really think about how you are approaching a piece of structure before you even get there. You have to analyze the wind, the sun, and the layout of the spot, and then formulate a plan of attack that allows you to pick it apart from a distance. It might mean making 10 or 15 casts to a spot from one boat position before you quietly move to the next. You might spend 30 minutes fishing a spot that you used to spend only 5 minutes on, but the quality of your presentation on each cast will be infinitely higher. You are no longer just casting randomly, you are strategically presenting your lure to fish that are unpressured and in a natural, feedable state. This is the chess match of fishing, not the chaos of just chunking and winding. This mindset shift also impacts how you leave a spot. Just as you approach a spot with stealth, you should leave it with stealth as well. Let's say you've just finished fishing a point. The worst thing you can do is crank up the big motor right there and blast off to your next spot. Any fish that were in that area and any fish on adjacent spots now know you were there. The sound of that outboard starting carries an incredible distance underwater. A better way is to use your trolling motor on low to slowly and quietly pull away from the area. Don't start your big motor until you are several hundred yards away from any water you plan to fish later in the day. It's about maintaining that bubble of stealth around you at all times. Think of the entire lake as a grid. Every time you make a loud noise or a sudden movement, you're not just spooking the fish under you, you're potentially alerting fish in the next grid square over. Be a ghost on the water, both coming and going. Let's bring it back to a very common scenario. You pull up to a community hole, a well-known spot that always holds fish, but it gets hammered with pressure. There are probably 2 or 3 other boats there. Watch what they do. Almost certainly, they will be sitting right on top of the most productive part of the structure, casting outwards. They are sitting in the fish's living room. You, with your new understanding, will do the opposite. You will stay way off the structure, maybe even farther away than seems reasonable. You will position your boat in the dead water and make long casts into the heart of the structure. You are fishing from the outside in. The other anglers are spooking the fish and pushing them around. You are positioned perfectly to intercept those fish as they try to move away from the pressure or to catch the ones that the other boats never even knew were there. By simply reversing the conventional wisdom of boat positioning, you can absolutely dominate on pressured lakes. Ultimately, this all comes down to a fundamental respect for your quarry. We have to stop thinking of bass as simple, reactive eating machines. They are wild animals that have survived and grown large because they have highly tuned survival instincts. They are masters of their environment. Every time we go out on the water, we are intruders in that environment. The more we can do to minimize our footprint and act less like an intruder, the more successful we will be. It's about blending in. It's about using observation and woodsmanship, or in this case, watermanship, to outsmart the fish on its own terms. Shifting your mindset from how can I get my lure to the fish to how can I get my lure to the fish without it ever knowing I am here is the single biggest step you can take to level up your pre-spawn fishing. The fish haven't changed. We are the ones who need to adapt our approach to their world, not the other way around. It's a game of stealth, and the quietest angler always wins. So let's wrap this all up. We've talked about pressure waves, shadows, noise, electronics, and the hypersensitive nature of pre-spawn base. If there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's that your boat is not just a platform. It's an active and often negative part of the underwater environment. The biggest aha moment for me was realizing that the fish I was seeing on my graph were often the fish that were already spooked or were simply ignoring me. The real catchable fish were the ones farther away, the ones I couldn't see, the ones living outside that bubble of fear my boat was creating. This realization completely changes the game. It forces you to stop chasing dots on a screen and start fishing the entire area with a stealthy, methodical plan. It turns you from a passive fisherman into an active hunter. You start thinking about the sun and the wind as tools, not inconveniences. Your first cast to a spot becomes your most important one because it's your only truly stealthy presentation. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this. If this changed how you think about your boat positioning, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more content that goes against the grain. Now, I have a final question for you, and I want you to be honest. What is the single loudest, most fish-spooking mistake you've ever made in a boat? Share your story in the comments below. We've all been there.